Hello, everybody. Welcome to Resilience Plus Rise, the podcast where we transform adversities into triumph, illuminate the extraordinary potential within us. When I say extraordinary, yes, here I'm talking to ordinary people, but who have done a little extra, and we look at them and say, extraordinary. This is about all of us. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria, a resilience coach, an ultra marathoner, and a firm believer in your next most powerful chapter. This podcast is a companion to my upcoming book, Resilience Plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash Your Marathon of Life, coming hopefully by April 2025. Here we amplify stories of hope, perseverance, and success to inspire your journey. Today, I'm excited, but more than that, I'm humble because when I talk about resilience, I've met amazing personalities who have been resilient in their journey of life. Today, again, I've got this amazing personality. The title would be like From Rehab to Resilience. Welcome to Troy Kranes. Troy, before I can hand the spotlight on to you, let me just give a brief intro about who Troy Kranes is. A man whose journey of overcoming adversities is nothing short of extraordinary. Troy has a powerful story that's a testament of human capacity for transformation, taking him from the battling of addiction and obesity to facing a rare and a life threatening cancer diagnosis. Instead of succumbing to relapse, Troy designed a powerful routine based on HALT mnemonics, HALT. I won't go deep into it because I would allow Troy to talk about it. And he has ultimately come to a point wherein he's not only saving his own life, but creating an inspiration to many others on the way. So, without much me talking, Troy, welcome to Resilience Plus Rise podcast.
Oh my gosh, Thomas. Well, thank you for having me. And I'm blushing now. What an introduction. But I'm honored that you had me here, and I'm very excited to share this space with you and have a nice conversation today.
Fantastic. So,
Yeah.
um, as I mentioned before, is that I know that you're a storyteller. And one of my favorite authors, Yuval Noah, talks about we humanity have been built up on one tenet that is about storytelling. Tell me a story. Who are you?
Tell you a story. Okay. Um, sure. Yeah, I'll tell you a story. So in the summer of 2021, my wife and I took our kids to go splash in a river, right? It's the middle of the summer, it's hot, they go cool off, and one of my kids throws a fit, right? And I'm talking about ping pong style, like fists pounding. Kids throw fits. He was 4 o'clock at the time, or something like that. So this is not a big deal normally, right? But he was also in the middle of the street. He was in a crosswalk. And so I run out and I scoop him up, and he's flailing, and I feel in my shoulder it buckles a little bit, and I hear this sound that it's not a pop, or it's like a crackle, you know.
Mhm.
And I kind of like circle my elbow around a little bit, and I say what every like mid-30s guy says, which is getting old sucks. And then I forget about it, right? 2 weeks later, I'm feeling fine. No big deal. Maybe every now and then for the next year, I tweak it,
Mhm.
and I just say like, getting old sucks again, right? Uh, and then one day I'm lifting weights. It's early in the morning, and I'm doing my bicep curls, and I feel the same kind of buckle, and I hear the same crackle. Right? It's not a snap, it's not a pop. It's a little bit of a crackle, and I say to myself, like, I put this off for a year. I should go get it checked out. So I book an appointment. I go to the orthopedics office. He's, right 5 minutes away from my house, and pretty normal visit. He takes an X-ray, looks at the X-ray, not really conclusive. He wants an MRI. I figured I would need an MRI anyway, no big deal. And then he says, I'm gonna mark it as an emergency so that the insurance company doesn't hassle us about it, and you can get it done pretty quickly. And I clocked that, right? Because emergency is not a word that I want my doctors to use. But again, it's 2021. It's the summer. I figure they're trying to get things done quickly because maybe in the winter we get another surge of COVID.
Yes.
So I say, okay, he didn't make a big deal of it. I'm not going to make a big deal of it either. So, but I go from his office to go get an MRI and, climb in, do the MRI. Later that evening, 5:30 at night, he calls me and he says, Troy, I'm not the doctor for you. You are going to need the doctor who deals with rare orthopedic tumors.
Okay.
And I say, man, if emergency was on the list of things I don't like my doctors to say, I'll tell you that rare orthopedic tumors, boom, top of the list. And he says, I sent your images to a couple guys and I'll call you in the morning and let you know who to get in touch with. And I say, oh, okay. And meanwhile, it's dinner time, right? It's 5:30, it's 6 o'clock. I have two hungry boys who are tearing my house apart as macaroni and cheese boils over on the stove and hisses. And my wife says, oh, who is that? And I tell her, I'm like, oh, it's the doctor. I have a tumor. And we just lived with that for the night. And then this guy calls me back again at 8:30 in the morning. So I was his last call of the night and then his first call of the morning. And he says, you gotta call Dr. Lerman. He specializes in rare orthopedic tumors. He's actually one of the best guys in the country for this. He happens to live in town. I live in Denver. But he's on vacation. This guy, he texted the images to the surgeon. Surgeon's on vacation. He looks at the images on the text message and says, I want that guy in my office when I'm back in town. I want him to be my first meeting. So things are moving fast. Things are moving fast, right? And I go in first thing, and he says, I need a new MRI because the MRI I got only showed my shoulder joint and not my shoulder blade. So I go get the MRI, first appointment, get a biopsy. Biopsy comes back and I have what's called chondrosarcoma.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly rare. It's like 0.5% of all cancer diagnoses are this, and it's a bone cancer that develops in your cartilage. So incredibly rare, and even more rare to get it in your shoulder blade. People get it in their hips, they get it other places, but not often in the shoulder blade. And he says, yeah, man, this is his words, a big, scary, dangerous, rare cancer. I said, well, that's the bingo, right? And 2 weeks later, he removes my whole shoulder blade. He had to take it all out. He had to take it all out to get the cancer out. And but when I got the diagnosis, the tricky part was I was 98 days sober. I was supposed to graduate from rehab that week. And man, I'll tell you, if there's, they tell you that when you graduate from rehab or whatever, the world will test you. The world will test your sobriety on your way out of treatment. And this was like if there was an evil scientist just like tucked away in a secret lair devising the worst possible relapse scenarios, it would be this one.
Okay, Troy, let me just pause you over there. So
Please.
what I'm hearing over here, Troy, is that you had an addiction,
Yeah.
but you took the path of walking away from it, going through a program of being sober,
Hmm.
and the time when it came to an end wherein you would be celebrating, the universe threw another curveball at you and asked you that, hey, okay, you you stood up. Let me see how you can stand up now. And this is what they gave you. But you had all the reasons to go back because when you hear, as a human, when you hear this thing, what do you go? Okay, your family is there, but your nearest person is to your own self is something which gave you the so-called comfort at some point of time.
100%. I mean, you know, every single night for years, I would decompress or de-stress with a cocktail or four, right? It was a way for me to disassociate from stress in my life, a way for me to look for some peace at the end of the day, some quiet at the end of the day. And I would do it for little things, right? Oh, I didn't get this project done, or the sale that I wanted to make didn't go through. I bet let me just have a cocktail, right? Uh, no,
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry about rudely. What were you doing at that time?
yeah. My whole professional career, I worked in beverage alcohol. So, um,
Ah, the good old friend.
yeah, I was getting high on my own supply, as they'd say, right?
Okay.
Um, and in that industry, you don't get into the industry if you don't like to drink, right? So that was there already. I like to drink, so that industry was great, and it did, and I did well in it, and in many ways it was good for my life, but not, and then until it wasn't, maybe is the best way to put it. It was
Hmm.
good until it wasn't, right? And that happens with addiction a lot, right? Like maybe when you start drinking or whatever you're using, it starts fine. It starts with no consequences, or maybe it's good, right? Like I met a lot of people. I did, I progressed professionally, and then there's a tipping point when uh, the upsides vanish and the consequences mount, and you still don't stop. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah, addiction becomes you.
Yeah, yeah,
So let's move a little ahead. So now you are come to a point wherein you are have gone through the surgery. You're battling your own relapse to take place. What were the key tipping points that helped you to open this door with many locks?
yeah. That's a good question. And the stats on people who overcome addiction in their first year are not great. Most will relapse. Most relapse. And I asked the therapist at my treatment facility, I said, how do people mess this up? How do so many people mess this up? And she said, well, people don't make good decisions when they're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And I was terrified, Thomas, because you can't just stop being those things, right? Like we're those things all the time just because we're human. So that was scary. The other part that was terrifying was she basically was saying, hey, when you're feeling upset, or when you're feeling like you want to retreat into alcohol, you have to run through this checklist. Like, am I hungry? Like, I want to drink. Am I just hungry? Am I mad? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? so I said, okay, then I got to remember to run through that checklist, but then I also have to, once I diagnose myself, make a good decision, not a bad decision. That to me sounds like it takes a lot of willpower. And Thomas, I didn't go to rehab because I had a lot of willpower. So it seemed flawed. It seemed like it could be powerful, but the way that it was explained to me or how people use it, I thought was a little bit flawed because it it demanded that you react in a good way. And so I thought, what if I actually get proactive about these things instead of reactive? And what if I plan my day so that I eat before I'm hungry? I process my emotions instead of bottling them. I call my friends so I don't feel lonely. And I prioritize my sleep and my exercise. Because if I can, if I think of them as these 4 buckets, if I can keep the buckets from getting empty and I can fill them ahead of time, I'm probably going to give myself a shot at success here. And so that's what I did.
So, guys who are listening to this one, I will be putting out Troy's connections and his links in the comments below, and do reach out to him because yes, we all struggle, but there are humans who struggle and more. What I'm hearing over here is that yes, he went through it. What you just mentioned about but me when I was going through your information about HALT, that is hungry, angry, lonely, uh,
Tired.
tired. That makes so much of sense. So when you start filling yourself up, as we talk about self-care, what I hear is these elements are about self-care.
Yeah.
How was it creating a resonance in your own life and the life of your family, first and foremost? Just your own life, your life of the family, and after that we talk about community. So let's just focus about you and the family.
Yeah, I mean, the one big part of recovery, and especially in 12-step programs, is a power higher than yourself, right? Or greater power. And it gets a little controversial because people who are atheists or are not spiritual, don't believe in God, really shy away from getting help because they think that they'll have to turn into
A
a religious
religious.
person, right? And they do backflips to say, no, you have to come up with your own greater power. Some people use nature, for example. If
Mhm.
they don't, if they don't believe in God, they do nature. And I chose family. I did all of this because I saw my life. If I didn't change things, I was getting divorced, wouldn't see my kids. I come from a family divorce, and it messed me up. And I didn't want that for me. I didn't want to relive that myself. And I didn't want that to happen to my boys either. So I made my family my higher power. Um, and they've been incredibly supportive and amazing. And I can't say enough good things about them and how I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have succeeded without them.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So as I've been talking to many, one of the elements that I've always realized is that a purpose comes from the deepest of our pains.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've just heard is that yes, you are in a hurting space and
Yeah.
you change that into a purpose. And it was what we just heard was not just about yourself understanding the concept of HALT, HALT, but also you started giving it out to the community and to the world that this is how you have risen above, risen like a phoenix. And I don't say the struggles would have stopped or maybe must have, whatever it is, but you're still fighting every day as a chance to give back. Would you want to say something more about HALT program?
Well, the important thing is that these are not specific to addicts. Everybody feels this way. right? And what I see is I see people who run around and they solve problems all the time, right? Like our society in particular is really interested in solving problems. What's the fix? What's the fix? How do I fix it? How do I fix it? And what I found, or what was kind of foisted upon me, if you will, but these are all problems that don't have any solutions. So if you're constantly looking to fix something that inherently does not have a solution, you will become frustrated. And I got much better results when I turned from trying to fix everything to accepting these are, you could call them chronic issues that will never go away, right? Play along. I bet, did you get hungry today?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did. And I'm
yeah,
having my tea,
yeah,
herbal tea,
exactly, right? And I bet you ate something yesterday, yes?
yesterday. Yeah.
And I'm gonna make a wild guess that you will tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that.
How did you know that?
I'm clairvoyant. And the thing to learn from that is you'll get better results when you realize that you can nurture those needs instead of trying to fix them. Because the fixes, maybe they're quick, but they don't last, right? And so by thinking long term and saying, well, I'm just going to manage this like a little bit at a time or nurture this a little bit at a time, you get better results than if you think you're going to fix it all the time. And it's true for nutrition, right? And how we eat. Because if you think about quick fixes, right? Like fast food, Snickers bar, not great, right? All the quick fixes for your hunger, probably not great. The same thing is true for your emotions. It certainly was for me. What's the fastest thing to do to process an emotion? Stuff it, right?
Stress
Forget
eating. Yeah,
about it.
I've got a challenge on
Push it
that. Yeah.
aside, you know? Um, Relationships, it's social media, right? Social media is like the potato chip of social interaction. It's fast and unsatisfying. So you got to do it again and again and again and again and again. But I'll tell you what, you take 10 minutes to call somebody, to call your friend and talk to them on the phone. It's like eating a ribeye versus a potato chip. Or if you don't eat meat, whatever, your most satisfying meal, right? And the same thing for sleep and exercise, right? You don't get a six pack after doing 20 sit-ups, right? You got to work on it a little bit at a time. Or whatever, six pack, or the point
Yep.
is being healthy, right? Like you're not gonna get there by doing it once,
Of course.
right? And so what I did is I set up a it's basically a journal. We'll call it a journal, right? And so every day I check in with myself. It's the first thing. I use the restroom, I take a shower, I eat, and then I journal, right? And I rate how I slept, how my day was. I set a goal for the day. Like if I'm only going to get one thing done, what am I going to do? And sometimes I like those things to be sometimes the pebble in my shoe, right? Something that I'm going to accomplish in 24 hours. But so I write that down, and then I wrote down what I ate the day before. I don't count calories or anything. I just say like, okay, I had yogurt for lunch, I had salad for dinner, whatever it is, and then I grade it on a scale from 1 to 4, and it all then goes on a graph, and you can see, and research supports this. If you can put things on a line graph, you internalize them better, right? And I weigh myself every day because I was big. I was over 200 pounds. I lost 50 pounds paying attention to myself, and by graphing it, right? So it takes me 90 seconds to kind of do my check-in, and then I'll spend 15 or 20 minutes writing in the journal. And the writing is important for a couple reasons. First, the way that I set up my prompts, I defined 7 pillars of my life. Okay. So on Mondays, I write about affirmations. I want to hype myself. I want to be my own hype man at the beginning of the week, right? Tuesdays, I flip it and I look at challenging emotions. Wednesday, I call Slay the Dragon Day, and it's about big projects. People who have big projects smile a lot. You just wrote a book, so you get it, right? On Thursday, I read about my marriage. On Friday, I read about work. On Saturday, I read about my kids. And on Sunday, I read about my aspirations. And the reason I cycle through those 7 pillars is because it prevents me from building up any resentments. Resentment and overthinking will drain the joy from your life. And if you let them build up, you're choosing a miserable life, in my opinion. And so by revisiting them once a week, I can see if there's anything that I've let built up, and nothing is going to go more than 6 days, right? And then I can say to myself, either I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, or this is something that I need to bring up in my relationships or confront or do something about instead of letting it pile up. So that's the reason for the 7-day cycle. It's to reduce resentment. The reason that writing is important is because there's a magic that happens when you transform your thoughts to language, right? And here's an exercise that everyone can do. Find your favorite podcast, not the one that you're listening to right now, the next one, but play it for like 30 seconds on 3.5x speed. Okay. You will not understand a single thing, right? Okay. Sure. At 3.5x speed, that's about 500 words per minute. Okay. Ethan Kross, who is a psychologist at the University of Michigan, opens his book Chatter by saying our minds can generate 4,000 words per minute. Okay, so your mind is moving at 4,000 words a minute. You just demonstrated you can't understand 500 words per minute. So it's hard to process your thoughts if they're just spinning, right? James Pennebaker from the University of Texas in Austin wrote a book about, he calls it expressive writing. I think many people would understand it as journaling. Forces you to take those 4,000 words a minute of thought and then turn them into language. And if you speak them, you can speak them like into a voice recorder or something. You speak at 125, maybe 130 words a minute. Mm-hmm. Much slower than you think, right? So you're getting better. Now you can understand a little bit more. And you could think of this another way. You've probably heard that the best way to learn something is to teach it. Yes. Okay. So, and why is that? It's because you have to change it into language that has to be understood by someone else. Now, in the journal, this just has to be understood by you, but you have to turn it into words that ostensibly somebody else could understand if they read them. Yes? Okay. So if you type your journal, then maybe you type 40 words a minute. If you're really fast, you're doing 60 words a minute, but compared to 4,000. Yes. Okay. Now, if you write by hand, it's 13. Now you are in a place where you can understand what you're thinking. Super.
So, what we just heard, Troy, about how you work this program and how you translate by, I believe you have got, you're a keynote speaker and you go and train. You're also a coach where you work around with right from the C-suite to whichever level a person is coming from. And do you have anything which is happening in the near future or something like that that people can be aware about, or is there some other places that they can go and hear more about this?
Yeah, time to plug my stuff. Yes. I have a couple things that are pretty exciting. So you have a book coming out in April. I have a book coming out in April or May or something. I
Wow,
actually
cool, nice.
this morning sent it to my copy editor. So I finished it over the weekend. Finished revising over the weekend. So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So that will print it, and so in the spring, we're coming up pretty quickly. So for information on that, I would direct people to my website. It's troykarnes.com, and sign up for the newsletter. That will keep you up to date with everything. But if they wanted to pre-order the book, they could do that as well too on the book page on the website.
Okay,
So yeah,
fantastic. Just being mindful of the time, Troy, is that
yeah,
but this last few, it could be a few minutes or it could be just a few seconds. But
yeah.
here, I would, whatever now comes to your mind, is there any parting thoughts, last thoughts that you would like to tell the listeners who have reached until this point of time on the podcast? Something that you would like. I'm not saying about advice. I would talk more about suggestion or something which is who Troy is that. Hey guys,
Yeah, the the first thing is a toxic belief that I held for many years and held me back. And that is asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of maturity.
okay.
And I grew up in kind of a blue collar family. I worked for a landscaping company for, from high school through college. And, you know, being manly there sounded like not complaining, working through whatever you were doing without asking for any help. And my idea of leadership at the time was to
Hmm.
put everybody else ahead of me, make sure everybody else had everything they wanted and needed before I took care of myself. And I have a very different view of that now. When you get on the airplane, the flight attendants tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before you help somebody else, right?
True.
And they say that because if you don't, you will pass out. If you pass out, you cannot help anyone else. And I started basically doing that with my self-care. So,
Beautiful.
it's one of the reasons I wake up a little bit earlier than everybody else in my house so I can go through this process, do my journaling, move my body, put my own oxygen mask on before anybody else wakes up. And then I'm ready to help. And that flip changed and improved so many things in my life. So if it's just a parting shot or a thought, it's that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of maturity.
Wonderful. I actually say is that it's all about in my podcast time and again I've mentioned is that we all are, even though we don't realize it, we are angels with one wing. It's only when we hold on to somebody else that's when we start flying.
It's
Not only
beautiful.
for you, but also to the other ones. Wow, this was absolutely a raw and a very, very inspiring conversation. So, guys, what we just heard in this last 30 plus minutes was the halt trigger when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're lonely, and when you're tired. How that can lead to bad decisions. And as you mentioned, this is not just for the people who are having addiction, but or those in recovery, but to everybody. Yes, he put in the practical strategies of protecting yourself, self care. Here was a beautiful story about turning the personal struggle into a source of strength and inspiration. Troy, your stories is a beautiful and a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to choose resilience and create a life of purpose and meaning. With this, I would like to conclude today's session. Thank you so very much for your space and time.
Thomas, thank you for having me. This is awesome.